So I'm happy to see all of you, and I'm happy to see that slowly our Talmidim are coming back to Eretz HaKodesh and to learn Torah in Eretz Yisrael. Ein Torah ke Torah's Eretz Yisrael. So I didn't think Torah's Chaim in America was nearly as successful as Torah's Chaim in Yerushalayim Yir HaKodesh. So we decided that there's going to be one Torah's Chaim instead of two. So in this week's parasha, V'yetze Yitzchak lesuach besoda, Chazal's interpretation is Yitzchak hispalel. And in three different parashiyos we're learning these weeks: Avraham Avinu, V'yashkem Avraham b'boiker, Avraham tikkun shachris, V'yetze Yitzchak lesuach besoda tikkun mincha, V'yivga b'mokem v'yolen sham, Ein p'gia ela b'loshen tefillah, Yaakov Avinu tikkun arvis. So the three tefillahs that we say every day were instituted, put into place by the Ovis HaGedoshim. Let's have a look at the Gemara in Brochas Chav Amud Beis. Itmar Reb Yossi ber Reb Chanina Omer tefillas Ovis tiknum. That the Ovis HaGedoshim were metakan the tefillahs, and the Gemara brings the three psukim that I mentioned. Vayashkem Avraham b'boiker el hamokom asher omed sham, Ein amido elo tefillah, shenema v'yamid pinchas v'yafalel. Yitzchak tikkun mincha, that's this week's parsha. V'yesi Yitzchak lesuach besoda lefnois erev, ve'ein sicha elo tefillah. Lefnei Hashem yishpoch sichoi. Yam tikkun arvis shenema v'yivga momokem v'yolen sham. And how do we know that Pegia is a loshen tefillah? Chazal quote the posek. V'ato, al tespana b'adu amesev al tisu b'adu mreina v'tefillah v'al tivga bi. So the others were metakan the three tefillahs. And then the Gemara brings another opinion that the three tefillahs are keneged korbanos. Shachris is associated with Tomet Shel Shachar, Mincha Tomet Shel Beinu Arbayim. And why is tefillahs arvis rishus? Because arvis is Averum upidorim shenishtayaru. If they weren't maktir all the besara korbanos by day, they could do it by night. So that's not obligatory, it's not a chiyuv, but it is a possibility. It is permissible, and therefore arvis is tefillas arvis rishus. Zamachlokes Rambam in Ramban, is tefillah a mitzvah diuraisa or a mitzvah derabanan? What would be the source if it's a mitzvah diuraisa? Not the Ovis HaGedoshim. From the Ovis we only learn the three tefillahs every day. But the mitzvah of tefillah, we learn Tanis of Beis Omed Aleph. It's not on our source sheet, but it should be. The Gemara in Tanis of Beis Omed Aleph says, Va'avadetem es Hashem Elokeichem, Eza avoidu shebelev, la'avdoi b'chol avavchem, zet tefillah. And the Rambam maintains that's a drosha Gemara and tefillah is a diuraisa. Let's have a look at the Rambam in the beginning of Hilchas Tefillah. Hilchas Tefillah ve'berchas koyanim. That's the protei ha-mitzvahs. Yesh b'chlol nishtei mitzvot aseh. Achat, lavod es Hashem b'chol yoim b'tefillah. Why does the Rambam write, lavod es Hashem b'chol yoim b'tefillah? Was the source of this mitzvah is la'avdoi b'chol avavchem. Ezui avodah shebelev. And the Rambam goes over this halacha in the very first halacha in Hilchos Tefillah. Mitzvah aseh le'esparal b'kol yoim shenema va'avadetem es Hashem Elokeichem. Mepi hashmua lamdu she'avodah zu hi tefillah shenemar ule'avdoi b'chol avavchem. Ez avodah shebelev zu tefillah. However, ein minyan atfilas min haTorah ve'ein mishnah tefillah zois min haTorah ve'ein atfilas man kavua min haTorah. That means, how many tefillahs? Is only midirabanan. Nusach tefillah, only midirabanan. Zman tefillah, midirabanan. Min haTorah, l'espalal b'kol yom. Could be early in the morning, could be late by night. And whatever you say. Thank you, Hashem. Yeah? You see that every place today? Thank you, Hashem. Person is Yoitze, mitzvah tefillah diuraisa. I love you, Hashem. Yoitze, mitzvah tefillah diuraisa. Whatever you say, just connect. Just talk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the mitzvah min haTorah. The Ramban disagrees with the Rambam. And the Ramban, source number 4, Hasogas HaRamban, And the Rambam brings several sugyas. Mitzvah's Tefillah is only midrabanan. So at the end, if we look at the end of this paragraph, Hasugas HaRamban in Avodas Tefillah, Ikar HaKosev LaOvle B'chol Avavchem, Mitzvah Say, Shetia Kol Avodaseinu L'Kel Yisborach B'chol Avaveinu, B'kavona Retzuyo, Shlemo, L'Shmo, Be'ein Hirur Ra. So the Ramban says, the drasha that the Gemara says, Eiz Avodah Shebelev Zeh Tefillah is only an asmachta. But the interpretation of this posuk La'ovda B'chol Avavchem is, it is what the Rambam defines, a mitzvah klolis, a general mitzvah. It affects all the taryag. Whatever you do, whatever mitzvah you perform, it should be l'shem shemayim. Lasses nachas ruach l'kodesh baruch hu, without any personal motives or personal benefit. That is the mitzvah la'avdoi b'chol levavchem. So the Ramban does indicate that maybe if we will wish to concede to the Rambam, maybe b'shas tzora would be a mitzvah d'oraisa, but that is only maybe. That is the opinion of the Ramban. So let me just make a general comment. The Rambam and the Ramban have a machloikis whether tefillah is mid'oraisa or midrabanan. But in time of war, kuli alma moedim that it's a mitzvah d'oraisa. Where's the source? In Parshas Baloischo, in the mitzvah of Chatzoitzos. V'hoyu kisovem machom al artzachem v'hareoisem. And that is blowing the horn, blowing the Chatzoitzos. And the Ritva explains at the end of Masechet Rosh Hashanah that Truah is always lahaloises at filo l'shamayim. Blowing the shofar into itself, or the Chatzoitzos, is not a mitzvah b'shas tzora, b'shas malchoma, and Kelshon Chazal, lizoik v'lahariya. So in time of war, everybody agrees that it's a mitzvah d'oraisa to daven. Not from the Avos, because the tefillas of the Avos had nothing to do with war, and not from Vavadetem es Hashem Elokeichem. Vavadetem es Hashem Elokeichem, that's the machloikis Rambam Ramban. Is it a drosha gemura or only an asmachta? Totally different source. And that is in the mitzvah of Chatzoitzos. The Magen Avraham wonders in Tov Kufayin Vav, why don't we blow Chatzoitzos b'eis tzoro? And the Mishnah Berurah Tov Kufayin Vav quotes the Pri Megadim because the mitzvah is only in Eretz Yisrael. That was a good response, a good explanation 400 years ago, in the days of the Magen Avraham, 200 years ago, in the days of the Pri Megadim. But we're in Eretz Yisrael. So why don't we blow the Chatzoitzos? Some say because we don't know what the Chatzoitzos are. Well, in modern Hebrew, Chatzotzot are trumpets. We know what a trumpet is. But how do we know that Chatzoitzos in Toras Moshe is the trumpet we today call a Chatzotzah? But the Mishnah Berurah says, Chatzoitzos lav dafka. It could be any wind instrument. Is that what these instruments are called, that you blow? It could be any other instrument, and lav davka chatzotzos. Shofars are as good. So some kehillas in Eretz Yisrael, I think some Sephardi shuls and the Zilbermans, Tfilas Bahab, they blew shofars, hundreds of shofars together. But our minig, like the Magen Avraham says, we don't blow the chatzotzos, and we wonder why. So the Ramban, Sof Rosh Hashanah, at the end of Rosh Hashanah, the Ramban says that the mitzvah of Chatzoitzos is only when Kol Yisrael or Rav Yisrael are b'sakana. So once again, in the past, that wasn't the situation. Today, maybe Rav Yisrael, because the biggest center of Jews in the entire world today is in Eretz Yisrael. Are most of the Jews in Eretz Yisrael? Probably not. But to our dismay, Jews don't feel safe in the entire world today with the rise of anti-Semitism. I've been asked by a few kehillas in France, people want to take their mezuzahs down, but because they're afraid. And I say, what a tragic question. The mezuzah is a shmirah. So if you are afraid, you need to check your mezuzahs and be confident that you have the best mezuzah around, that you have a mahudadik mezuzah. Don't take your mezuzahs down because you're afraid. When you're afraid, you need to be mahadeh b'mitzvahs mezuzah because ein lechu shmirah gedoyle mezuzah. But anyway, so why don't we blow the chatzotzes? That's a very interesting question, which we might discuss in another opportunity, because today I want to focus more on Tefillah. So the היוםהשחור writes an interesting line. I think he's right, but it's ill-defined. Let's have a look at the היוםהשחור. נלה נזדעתי דאפילו לרמב"ן, אין הכוונה דעיקר חיוב דרבנן ומן התורה לכחיוב כלל להספלל. דאין זה סבור הכלל. אלא שאומר דאין זה נחשב במניין המצוות דינה, ככל דינה דרבנן דסוויקן לכולו. וזה אצלי כמו שכוסף הרמב"ן על שביס שבס. So let me explain my approach. And I said this many times, and it's such a big yesod. Today I will share with you two gross yesodes, two big yesodes. And both, to me, are a milita de pshita, and I just wonder why nobody said it till the Mincha Sosha, which is beyond me. So let me say this. Some of the most fundamental mitzvahs in the Torah are not included in Sefer HaMitzvahs, are not included in Taryag, even though they are maybe more important than many mitzvahs that are in the Taryag. Because Taryag mitzvahs is Taryag tzivuyim. And a tzivui translated into English is a command. Taryag mitzvahs is only when the Torah clearly, explicitly tells us this is what you have to do, or from this you have to abstain. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu megale retzonoi b'Torah in different ways, and not always b'loshon tzivui. And the most striking example I always bring is mitzvahs chinuch. So we all know chinuch is the Rabbanon. Would it be possible that min haTorah, person brings children into the world and they grow up like the birds, like the animals, like the fish, and father and mother don't need to look after them and try to teach them to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to do mitzvahs? Is that reasonable? Could that be? So maybe you will answer, there's a mitzvah of Talmud Torah, v'shinantum levonecha. But that is only for bonim, not for bonos. There's no mitzvah to teach Torah to your daughters. So a person only needs to care for his sons and his daughters. Let them do what they want. Go out in the street and do whatever you want. And mitzvah Talmud Torah is only on the father, not on the mother. So a mother bears no responsibility for her children. It's ridiculous. It's impossible. Chinuch is definitely a mitzvah diurais. How do we know? Ki yodativ lemana sheyitzav esbona v'beisa achla v'shamdu derech Hashem. And Rashi says ki yodativ is a loshen chibo. Kodesh Baruch Hu says, I love Avraham Avinu. And why do I love him? Kodesh Baruch Hu has many reasons to love Avraham Avinu. He was the first giant. He was the first to recognize the Kodesh Baruch Hu. And to bring tens of thousands of people closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like the Rambam so beautifully describes in the beginning of Hilchas Avodas Kechavim. Ad she'amad eitan zeh, v'nigbitzu elav alofim v'ravavois, v'shatal belibam et ha'ikar hagodol hazeh shel amunas hayichud. What else is special about Avraham Avinu? Kiyam kol ha'torah kula ad shelo nitno. Anything else special about Avraham Avinu? Asora nisyonis nisnasa va'omed bekulam. And why does the Kodesh Baruch Hu love Avraham Avinu? Not because Asora nisyonis, not because Kiyam kol ha'torah kula, not because Ben Sholosh hikir es boiroi, lemana sheyitzav esbona v'beiso achla v'shamdu derech Hashem. So why isn't it in the minyan ha-mitzvahs? Because it's not a command. It's not a command. It's a declaration, but it's min haTorah. So I say, of course you need to daven. And the Ramban doesn't mean to say that a good Jew doesn't need to daven. Is it reasonable a person all his life never talked to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, never really connected? Never said, thank you Hashem. Never said, I love you, never. Well, he said Kriya Shema, but Kriya Shema is not talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kriya Shema is Kabbalah Sal Malchus Shemayim. Tefillah is talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So according to the Ramban, it's not important. Of course it's important. How do we know? V'yashkem Avraham haboker, v'yetzi Yitzchak l'suach b'soda, v'yivga b'mokam v'yolen sham. It is what the Avos did. And if the Torah tells us what the Avos did, the Torah means to say it's what you have to do. But according to the Ramban, it's not a tzivui. And that's why it's not in the list. Example number 3 is Yishuv Eretz Yisrael according to the Rambam. So all the Achronim struggle with the fact that Rambam doesn't count Yishuv Eretz Yisrael and Minyan HaMitzvahs. And many say, according to the Rambam, it's not a mitzvah min haTorah. And I say, of course it's a mitzvah d'oraisa. How do we know? From last week's parsha. Lezaracho etei lesa'oretz hazois. Kodesh Baruch Hu promises Avraham Avinu, this land is for you. Kum v'hisalach ba'oretz kedei sheteinoicha lichbush b'fnei bonecho. Like the Gemara says in Bava Basra Daf Kufa Medalef. And the Kodesh Baruch Hu promises the land once again to Yitzchak and once again to Yaakov. Isn't that enough? Isn't that enough? But it's not a mitzvah to say according to the Rambam because it's not a command, it's not a tzivui. So that is my understanding of mitzvah Tefillah al-libe de Ramban. Tefillah is no less important to the Ramban than it is to the Rambam. But according to the Rambam, the Gemara in Tainus is at Rosh Gemara. V'avadetem es Hashem Elokeichem. It's a tzivui. According to the Ramban, v'avadetem has a different understanding. Kol HaTorah kula sheyeh l'shem shemayim. It's not a tzivui, but it's min haTorah, because that's what the Avos did, and we are supposed to emulate the Avos. So as I explained, Machlokes Rambam Ramban. And how does the Rambam know? Chayev odem le'espalel bekol yoim. Did you realize the Rambam, both in the Prota Mitzvahs and in Halacha Aleph? Mitzvahs asay le'espalel bekol yoim. The Posik just says la'ovdoi b'chol avavchem. He doesn't say bekol yoim. Lechem Mishnah and Kesef Mishnah have two different pshatim, and I think both are a bit far-fetched. Let's have a look at the Lechem Mishnah. Mitzvahs asay le'espalel bekol yoim. Yesh la'ayin. למה לא התחיל בהלכס קריאה שמע, מצווה עשה לקרוא קריאה שמע, כמו שהתחיל כאן בהלכס תפילה? ויש לו עמם, כנתרת ספר חרדים, דמצווה שיחות חייב אדם ליחד בכל רגע, ולפיכך לא חשב לאחס ממצווה סויד שבתורה לבד. ועוד קושו, מניין לא מכאן דאבה בכל יום. ובעל קריאת ספר כוסף. Does anybody know who the Kiryat Sefer is? Who wrote the Sefer, Kiryat Sefer? There actually are two Kiryat Sefers. Three. Who else wrote Kiryat Sefer? Reb Chaim Kanievsky has a Sefer al Rambam, Kiryat Sefer. But the Lechem Mishnah means the Mabit. The Mabit's Sefer and the Rambam is Kiryat Sefer. Kiryat Sefer kosem l'taras mishum dechsuv yavad Hashem lakem ve'ein avoida shebelev v'letfila u'b'sefer dekro omar u'bereches lachmuch u'v'esmamecha v'lechem v'mayim tzoro b'kol yom im ken tefila gam ken b'kol yom. Strange that the Rambam would fabricate this himself without a Makor and Chazal. If this is the reason, it should be in the Gemara. It's not reasonable that the Rambam said Bereches lachmuch u'v'esmamecha lechem v'mayim b'kol yom, so tefillah b'kol yom. To me, it's a dover rochik. Let's have a look at the Kesef Mishnah. Da'as Rabbeinu shemitzvah asay min haTorah l'espalel b'kol yom. Avadetem es Hashem v'avoid zu tzurich shem b'kol yom. Shemeinu b'kol yom, ulai nova Elohim ishi פעם אחת בכל ימיו, וזה ממש שלא יסבלוהו הדס. ואם כן הכוח הרחיב לספנה בכל יום. So the Kesef Mishnah seems to say it's a process of elimination. If not b'kol yom, then when? Once in a lifetime doesn't make sense. I think he's right, it doesn't make sense because there's no such a thing. There's no precedent. There's no other mitzvah that a person needs to perform once in a lifetime. It just doesn't make sense that there's any mitzvah that is once in your life. There's no such a thing, no such a concept. Well, 2 kids. But essentially, Pru Arvu is about having children. If you have a child and he died, you're mechuyev to try again. And the same with Ksiva Sefer Torah. You need to write a Sefer Torah only once in your lifetime, but that is as long as you have a Sefer Torah. If you sold it, if you lost it, you need to write a new one. So Priya Revia is like Ksiva Sefer Torah. It is about the result. But a mitzvah that has no result, it's just avodas ukeil. It's totally unreasonable that once in your lifetime you need to perform an act of avodas ukeil. So, once again, bris milah, well, you can't do it more than once, and I don't suggest anybody should try to do it more than once. It's about the result. So when a mitzvah is about the result, if you achieve the result, then you're yotzeh for all your life. But we are dealing with a mitzvah that is not about the result, the outcome, but avodas ukeil. There's no such a thing, any act of avodas Hashem that you do once in your life. So let me share with you Yesod Godol. It is a very common theme in my Sforim, especially in Minchas Osher Mitzvahs, but in other Sforim as well. Mitzvahs Asay Shebetoira are defined by 2 very fundamental categories. As I indicated just a few moments ago, many mitzvahs are about the outcome, about the result. Sreifas chometz, because you're not supposed to have chometz on Pesach. Binyan Maka, nobody chas v'sholem should fall off your roof and get killed. Mila, you're not supposed to have the orla. And every Jew should have the choisim of bris kodesh shel Avraham Avinu. So many mitzvahs are about the result. And the most vivid example I always give is mitzvahs that say uvi'arto horo mikirbecho, executing daled mises beisdin. So there's a person that was unemployed for a while and he got a job. He's the shliach beisdin to execute daled mises beisdin. And he specializes in skill esreifa hereg chenek. And one day he comes home terribly depressed and he tells his wife, for the past 2 weeks, I'm doing nothing. I'm just sitting and saying Tillim all day in my office. I didn't even have one mitzvah of Yartu Romekabecho, and he's very sad about it. One day he goes to his office and he calls his wife, you won't believe it. What a great day. I arrived in the office and there's a poster on my door. 2 skila, 1 sreifa, 3 hereg, 4 chenek. I have 8, 9 mitzvahs this morning. What a great day. If I would be in charge, I would let him go without severance. Crazy man. Get out of here. You're happy? He says, of course I'm happy because the Rambam writes in the end of Hilchas Lulav, Hasimcha sheyismacha odem b'asiyas hamitzvos avoda gedola hi v'kol hamonea atzmo misimcha zu ra'ui lehipora mimeno shene'emar tachas asher lo yavad eto Hashem Elokecho b'simcha v'betov levav. Aren't we supposed to be happy when we're mekayim mitzvahs? And we say, crazy man, you need to understand not all the mitzvahs are the same. Yes, you eat matzah, you have to be happy. You take the lulav and the esrog, happy. Sit in the sukkah, be happy. You say Kriya Shema Shachas V'Harvest. Sing and dance to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When you kill a Jew, you have to be sad. And Chazal say you need to fast. The Sanhedrin that paskins din and nefoshes don't eat that day. And you have to be profoundly sad. So not all the mitzvahs are the same. I just bring this as an example. Oviyat was not a mitzvah you need to be very happy about. So there are two fundamentally different types of mitzvahs. Some are about the result, and some are about avodas ukeil. There is no outcome. Avodas ukeil, and that is tefillin kriyas shema, your tefillin and your tzitzis, kiddush v'havdola, matzah v'morah, sukkah v'lulav. So let me make an interesting point. All the mitzvahs of Seder Hayom Shabbos HaMoyed are avodas ukeil. All the others are about the result. All the others. All the others besides Seder Hayom Shabbos and Moyed are only about the result. Goes the other way around as well. All the mitzvahs that are tamtzis avodas ukeil, if they're not associated with Shabbos and Yom Tov, behechreach, they are mitzvahs of Seder Hayom. Because the routine of a Jew is a routine of avodas ukeil. It's the reason we live. It's the reason we're here. We're here to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that is why the Torah doesn't even need to specify this, because it's self-evident. It's so pashut. All the mitzvahs that are essentially avodas ukeil, they're not about achieving a result. They're not about the outcome. But they are essentially avodas ukeil. Either they're associated with Shabbos and Yom Tov, which would include Kiyas Shofar, Matzah v'Morah, Sukkah v'Lulav, Kiddush v'Avdola. But if they're not associated with Shabbos and Yom Tov, naturally, these are the mitzvahs of Seder Hayom. And that is why it's so pushed for the Rambam, Chayav Odam Lesparal B'Kol Yom. Not because, if not, then when yes, pushut. It's avodas Hashem. Avodas Hashem is B'Kol Yom. Person opens his eyes in the morning, what is the first thing he's supposed to do? Moidani lefonecha. Before he closes his eye every night, what is the last thing he's supposed to do? Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad Kriya Shema Shalamito. And everything in between. Gimel Tfilis, Meir Brochus, Kriya Shema Shachas V'Avis. So let's have a look. Let's go back to the Rambam, source number 2. That's the Protei HaMitzvahs and Hilchos Tefillah. There's another B'chol Yom here. Did you notice? And the Kesef Mishnah and the Lecha Mishnah don't ask this question. Yes, B'chol Shtei Mitzvahs say. Achas Lavet es Hashem B'chol Yom B'Tefillah. Shniya Levorach Kanem es Yisrael B'Kol Yom. So how do we know that Berachas Kanem is B'Kol Yom? Same question as Tefillah. Where's the source of Berachas Kanem? Koitev Orches B'nei Yisrael. Omer Lahem Yivarech Hashem V'Yishmerech. How do we know B'Kol Yom? And in this pasuk, we do not find the Berachas Lachmocha V'Esmeimecha. How do we know Berachas Kanem is B'Kol Yom? And you can't say, because it's the Shmoin Esrei. Shmoin Esrei Mid'Rabbanan, Berachas Kanem D'Oraisa. The Rambam here talks about a mitzvah D'Oraisa, not a mitzvah D'Rabbanan. Same as I say. Naturally, B'Kol Yom. Because it's avodas ukeil. Most achronim maintain, it's not in the Rambam, that tefillin is b'kol yom. You're chayiv to put on tefillin at least once a day. How do we know tefillin is b'kol yom? Sha'atum lo yisrael edecha v'aretu b'neinecha. How do we know b'kol yom? Kesef Mishnah, Perekei Yesod Torah writes tefillin b'kol yom. The Levush and the Bialocha write the same in Simon Lamed Zayin. How do we know? Lididi, poshut. Poshut. It's avodas ukeil. All the mitzvahs that are tamtzis avodas ukeil are naturally b'kol yom. Because kol yom, our routine is a routine of avodas ukeil. That's why we're around. And that is why the Rambam writes, the pashtus gemura, mitzvahs say shel Torah yisparal odam b'kol yom. So as I mentioned before, Machlokes Rambam Ramban with the Tefillah is D'Oraisa. But in time of war, everybody agrees that Tefillah is Min HaTorah. And it is based on an entirely different sugya. We blow the horn, we blow the chatzotzos. And blowing the horn means lizoik ulaharia. You daven. And the shofars and the chatzotzos take up your tefillas to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the Kisei HaKavod. So in the past few weeks since Simchas Torah, in these difficult weeks, I've been saying almost in every shiur what is important in a time like this. You need to learn a lot of Torah, because Torah is the greatest gula. Achdus is another one. But these are only zgulas. Le'espalel is a chiyuv. So it comes before all the other segulos. So turning to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and crying out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shi'arachem el Amoi, that is a chiyuv. And many times I quoted a famous shmuz that Reb Chaim Shmulevitz gave, Erev Sukkos Tovshin Lamed Dalet. That was only 3 days after Melchemes Yom Kippurim broke out. And it was a very difficult time in Eretz Yisrael. And a Sichas Musa, Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, there is a Sicha, a shmuz, titled L'Regel HaMatzav. And in that shmuz, Reb Chaim says, Ein gvul l'chiyuv. There is no limit to our chiyuv to daven for those young soldiers that sacrificed their lives to fight for Eretz Yisrael. They're fighting for us. They're fighting, we should be able to sit in yeshiva and learn. So they fight for us, we need to learn for them. I think I mentioned in the yeshiva a few weeks ago, the Zohar, which is also Targum Onkelos in Parshas V'Zois HaBrocha. When Moshe Rabbeinu benches Zevulun, Smach Zevulun b'tzeisecho v'yesocho b'yoholecho, Hamikdova, the Netziv writes, V'zois la'olam al Yisrael, kisheyotzim le'melchama, miyachadim anoshem le'toiro ve'letfilo kol hayoim. And then Netziv says, Pshat, Samach Zvulun b'tzeisecho v'yisocho b'yolecho, Zvulun goes out to the front to wage war, and Yisocho goes to the Beis Medrash to learn Torah. And I'm surprised that the Netziv, one of the greatest commentators on Chumash, didn't realize that it's Targum Onkelos on the spot. And Onkelos is the most important of all Meforshei HaTorah. Rashi quotes Onkelos all the time, and Onkelos writes, Chadi Zevulun b'mavkach la'aguche krova al bali devavech. That Zvulun is happy to go wage war against our enemies. V'yesocho b'yolecho. And it's also in the Zohar on the spot in Parshas V'Zois HaBrocha. So I say to B'nai Torah, everybody is familiar with the Heskim Yesocha Zavulun, right? There is Yesocha Zavulun of peacetime, and there is another side to the Yesocha Zavulun equation in times of war. So Avreichim are familiar with Yesocha Zavulun of peacetime. Zavulun does business, he gives Yesocha money, and Yesocha learns for Zavulun, and they share the dividends. But this Heskim has another side to it as well. Smach Zvulun b'tzeisecho is when Zavulun leaves his business, he leaves his office, and he takes up his gun, and he goes to fight, and he sacrifices his life. He puts his life in danger. V'yesocha ba'oyalecha. They fight for us, and we learn for them. And that is also Yesocha Zavulun. But before anything else, we need to daven more and daven better and say another few Pirkei Tehillim every day, because B'shas Malchama, it's a chiyuv lizoik v'laharia. Kodesh Baruch Hu should listen to our tefillah, so we should be zoicha to only hear b'soiros toivois. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu should destroy our enemies. Hashem ish malchama, im Hashem lo yishmar, ir shav shokad shaimar, im Hashem lo yivin abayas, shav amalu boinav boit. We believe everything is bidei shemayim, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give atzlocha, v'tishkoi ta'oretz arba'am shana, v'tishkoi ta'oretz ad bias Moshiach tzidkenu b'mheiro v'yomeinu, amen.